I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is David, and I've been married to my wife, Linda, for 23 years. We have two kids, both grown up now. Our youngest, Mia, just got married. The wedding was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of love, family, and new beginnings. But instead, it became the day I discovered the truth about my wife's infidelity. In the months leading up to Mia's wedding, I noticed some subtle changes in Linda. At first, I brushed them off as mere stress from planning the wedding. She seemed more distracted, more irritable, and there were moments when I caught her staring off into space, lost in thought. She also started spending more time on her phone, suddenly protective of her messages. I thought maybe she was just trying to keep things organized for the wedding. However, looking back, I realize I should have trusted my instincts. On the day of the wedding, I was filled with pride. Mia looked beautiful in her dress, and my heart swelled as I walked her down the aisle. The ceremony was perfect, but it was during the reception that I saw something I'll never forget. It didn't take long before I noticed Linda flirting openly with one of the guests, a guy named Jake who was in his mid-30s. They were laughing, leaning in close and sharing whispers. It wasn't just innocent chatter either. There was something more intimate about their interaction that made my stomach churn. Mia caught my eye from across the room, her expression shifting from joy to concern as she observed her mother's behavior. I could see her jaw clenching, and she subtly shook her head at me, urging me to stay calm. But it was too late. My mind was racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was dreadfully wrong. I felt like I was watching a scene from a movie, one that was playing out in slow motion while the world around me continued to spin. The evening dragged on, but I couldn't focus on the festivities. Instead, I found myself watching Linda and Jake from a distance, feeling like an outsider in my own life. When the DJ started playing a slow song, I saw Linda pull Jake into a dance, their bodies swaying close together. At that moment, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I managed to excuse myself, telling Mia I needed some air, and I stepped outside the reception hall. The cool night air did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I pulled it out to see a text from Linda asking where I was. I couldn't respond. I was too overwhelmed. I felt like a stranger in my own home, in my own marriage. There was no denying that I was witnessing something that shattered the foundation of our relationship. By the time I returned to the reception, I was resolved to confront Linda. I needed answers, and I needed to know if what I witnessed was as real as it seemed. But when I approached her, she had already returned to Jake, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years. The betrayal stung, and I felt every laugh like a dagger piercing my heart. In that moment, I gathered my courage and confronted her. "Linda, can we talk?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, cutting through the noise of the party. She turned to me, surprise etched on her face. But there was a flicker of something else, guilt. I didn't know, but I was about to find out. The room faded away as we stepped outside, the noise of the reception merely a dull thrum. I could feel the tension crackling in the air between us, heavy and charged. "What's going on between you and Jake?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her response was a mix of defensive anger and denial. "It's nothing. He's just a friend. We were just having fun." The excuses spilled out of her like a dam breaking, each lie hitting me harder than the last. I could feel the walls closing in around me, and the anger bubbled to the surface. It was a whirlwind of emotions, and I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. As I stood there, listening to her weave a tale that felt more like a desperate attempt to cover her tracks, a part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted my wife back, the woman I fell in love with. But another part of me knew that trust had been shattered beyond repair. My heart raced as the weight of her betrayal settled in, and I felt a deep sadness wash over me. I needed to decide what to do next. How could I move forward from this? The answers were elusive, but one thing was clear. My life was about to change forever. The confrontation didn't go as I had hoped. Linda's defensive demeanor only fueled my anger and confusion. I wanted to scream, to shake her, and demand the truth. Instead, I stood there, feeling like a shell of a man. "Just a friend," I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. You looked like you were having a great time together, Linda. David, please, you're overreacting. She snapped, her tone sharp and almost dismissive. It felt like a slap across the face, her words coated in disdain. You're ruining Mia's wedding. Can't you just let it go for one night? Let it go? How could I let go of what I had just seen? I had walked into that wedding believing that we were a team, a family, and now I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. The laughter, the smiles, the joy, it all felt so hollow now. I was suffocating in the weight of her betrayal, and all she seemed to care about was saving face in front of others. I stepped back, taking a breath to compose myself. This isn't just about tonight, Linda. It's about our marriage, our family. How could you humiliate me like this? The hurt in my voice was unmistakable, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, maybe regret. But it quickly vanished, replaced by a mask of irritation. David, you're being dramatic. I can't believe you're making such a big deal out of nothing. You're just jealous because I was having fun. She crossed her arms, her body language defensive. It was as if she was trying to turn the tables on me, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong. The anger bubbled up inside me again. Fun. Flirting with another man at our daughter's wedding is fun to you. I was losing my grip. The scene felt surreal, like I was watching a bad play where the main actor had forgotten their lines. Do you even care how this affects Mia? Her face softened slightly at the mention of our daughter, but she quickly masked it. Of course I care, but you're making it impossible to enjoy the night. Can we talk about this later? I don't want to ruin Mia's big moment. Everything about her words felt manipulative, like she was more concerned with maintaining her appearance than with the reality of our crumbling marriage. You're right, this is about Mia, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. And you're ruining her night. But more than that, you're ruining our marriage. I turned away, tears blurring my vision. I felt so lost, so betrayed. The woman I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by someone who seemed willing to throw it all away for a spark of excitement. As I walked back inside, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The reception continued around me, a cacophony of laughter, dancing, and joy that felt foreign and distant. I forced a smile for Mia and did my best to mask my pain. She was radiant in her wedding dress, and I wanted more than anything to focus on her happiness, but every time I glanced at Linda, my heart twisted in my chest. As the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I slipped away to the restroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked broken. My wife was having an affair with someone who clearly didn't respect the vows we had taken together. I felt trapped, angry, and deeply hurt. I knew I had a decision to make. Every fiber of my being screamed to confront Linda again, to demand answers, to make her see the damage she was causing. But I also knew that the emotional roller coaster of this night was too much for me to handle alone. I needed to talk to someone to get a clearer perspective on what was happening. I stepped outside for a moment, taking in the fresh air and trying to gather my thoughts. Just then Mia found me. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I didn't want to burden her with the reality of what was happening, especially on her wedding day. "Yeah, just needed a breather," I lied, offering her a weak smile. She studied me for a moment, her eyes searching mine. "You sure? You've been acting a little strange tonight." How could I explain? I didn't want to ruin her special day, yet it felt impossible to keep the truth bottled up inside. "I'm fine, really," I insisted, but Mia didn't look convinced. "Just a little overwhelmed with the wedding, I guess." Mia nodded slowly, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. "If you need to talk, I'm here," she said softly, and I was struck by how mature she had become. I wanted to pull her into a hug to protect her from the realities of life, but I also felt a deep urge to protect her from her mother's betrayal. "Thanks, sweetheart. I appreciate it," I replied, forcing a smile. She nodded, satisfied for now, and rejoined her new husband and friends. As I watched her walk away, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me again. The night wore on, and I could feel the cracks in my marriage deepening. The laughter that surrounded me felt like a cruel reminder of what I was losing. It was time to take action, to figure out what to do next, and that thought scared the hell out of me. I couldn't let anger overshadow my judgment, but I also couldn't ignore what had happened. That night, I made a mental note to reach out to my best friend, Mike. He had been through a tough divorce and could offer some perspective. But it was more than that. I needed someone who could listen, who could possibly understand what I was feeling. I couldn't fight this battle alone, not when my heart felt so bruised and battered. As I re-entered the reception, I resolved to confront Linda once more. I needed to put everything on the table to lay bare the truth of how I felt and what I had witnessed. But I had to do it carefully, not wanting to ruin Mia's night completely. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer willing to be a passive participant in my own life. The rest of the night was a blur. I forced myself to engage in the festivities for Mia's sake, but my heart wasn't in it. I watched Linda from across the room, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with Jake. Each chuckle, each flirtatious glance felt like another dagger twisting in my back. I couldn't believe this was the woman I had shared my life with for over 2 decades. The moment the reception began to wind down, I felt a rush of determination wash over me. I needed to confront Linda again, but this time I would come prepared. No more half-hearted questions or vague accusations. I needed to lay everything on the table. It was time for honesty, no matter how painful it might be. As the last song played and the guests began to disperse, I pulled Linda aside. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions roiling within me. She looked taken aback, glancing back at Jake, who was chatting with some of our relatives. "Now, can't it wait until we're home?" she asked, irritation creeping into her tone. "No, it can't wait. This is important," I insisted, feeling my resolve harden. With a sigh, she nodded and followed me to a quieter corner of the venue, away from prying eyes and ears. "What is it, David?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively as if bracing for impact. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I can't pretend that I didn't see you with Jake tonight. You were flirting with him, Linda, and it was pretty damn obvious." Her expression shifted from irritation to defensiveness, and I pressed on. "Don't you dare try to downplay this. You can call it fun or just a friend, but I saw what it was. You were grinding up against him on the dance floor, and I'm not stupid. You may think you can lie to me, but you need to understand that I'm not buying it, not anymore." Linda's expression hardened, and for a moment I thought she might actually defend her actions. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It was just a little harmless flirting. I thought you'd understand that I wanted to have fun at our daughter's wedding." "Harmless? You're calling that harmless?" My voice rose slightly, but I forced myself to keep it in check. "You know how much I've sacrificed to make this marriage work. I've always stood by you, and now you're throwing it all away for some excitement." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Excitement? Give me a break. You can't just sit there and act like you're perfect. You've been distant lately, too. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of getting lost in your work, I wouldn't have felt the need to seek it elsewhere." Her words hit me like a freight train, and I struggled to keep my composure. "So this is my fault. You're blaming me for your decision to cheat." "I didn't cheat," she thundered back, her voice rising. "I don't know what you think you saw, but it was just innocent fun. You're being melodramatic, David." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Melodramatic? You're the one who can't accept the reality of what you've done. This isn't just about a little flirting, it's about trust, our family, our life together. You think I'm going to just stand here and let you play me for a fool?" Linda glared at me, her face twisted with anger. "You don't know anything about what I'm going through. You think you're the only one who's been affected by our marriage." I've felt alone for years. I had to take a step back, reeling from her words. Alone? Was she really trying to act like I hadn't been there for her? "You're the one who sought companionship outside of our marriage, Linda. If you were feeling alone, why didn't you talk to me about it instead of running to another man?" Her eyes flashed with defiance. "And what would that have done? You would have dismissed me like you always do. I've been trying to keep this family together for years, while you're too busy to even notice." The pain in her voice was evident, but her accusations felt like smoke and mirrors, deflecting the blame away from her actions. "I can't believe you're putting this all on me. I'm standing here confronting you because I care, because I want to know where we go from here." Linda's expression softened for the briefest moment, but it quickly hardened again. "You think this is about you. It's about me, too." "I want to feel alive again." "Alive?" I echoed, incredulous. "Is this what feeling alive looks like to you? betraying your husband in front of our daughter. You could have talked to me about your feelings, Linda. You didn't have to go to another man. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. I could see a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly masked it. Maybe you're right, but it's too late now. You've made up your mind about me, and I can't change that. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had hoped that perhaps this conversation would lead to a resolution, but instead it felt like we were spinning in circles, trapped in our grievances. I don't want to lose you, I admitted, my voice softening. But I can't continue pretending that everything is fine. We need to figure out what we want moving forward. Linda looked away, her arms falling to her sides. I don't know if we can come back from this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You've seen me at my worst, and I don't know how to fix it. In that moment, I could feel the cracks in our marriage widening, threatening to swallow us whole. I wanted to reach out, to hold her and tell her that we could get through this together, but I also knew that trust was something that couldn't be rebuilt overnight. Maybe we need some time apart, I suggested cautiously, my heart heavy with the weight of the words. I need to think, and so do you. Linda's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. Fine, she replied, her voice cold and distant. If that's what you want, maybe it's for the best. As I turned to walk away, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. I had stood up for myself, but the cost was high. I couldn't shake the feeling that our family dynamic had shifted irreparably, and I was left alone in the aftermath. Later that night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in my mind. I had never envisioned my life unraveling like this, especially during what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. The weight of my emotions pressed down on me as I tried to fathom the road ahead. I had a long way to go before I could figure out what I truly wanted and how to rebuild my life, whether with Linda or without her. But one thing was clear. I couldn't continue living in the shadows of her betrayal. I needed to find my own light again. The day after the wedding was one of the longest I'd ever experienced. I woke up early. The sun streaming through the window felt more like a spotlight than a source of warmth. The reality of what had happened pressed heavily on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Linda was already up, moving around the kitchen, her movements mechanical and devoid of joy. The silence between us was palpable, a chasm that had opened up overnight. When I finally gathered the courage to join her, she was pouring herself a cup of coffee. I could hardly look at her, knowing what had transpired the night before. "Good morning," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. She glanced up, her expression neutral, but there was a flicker of something, guilt perhaps. "Morning," she replied, turning back to the counter. I could sense the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. It felt wrong to pretend everything was fine when our world had been shattered. I wanted to talk, to address the elephant in the room, but every time I opened my mouth, the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I grabbed a mug and poured myself a cup of coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. We sat in silence, the sound of the clock ticking in the background a constant reminder of the time we were wasting. Finally, I broke the silence. "We need to discuss what happened last night," I said, my voice steady despite the weight of the conversation. Linda sighed, a long, drawn-out sound that spoke volumes. "Do we really, David? What's there to say? You've already made up your mind." "Made up my mind about what?" I shot back, unable to keep the frustration out of my tone. "I still want to understand what led you to that point. You can't just brush it off like it didn't happen." She looked at me then, her eyes flashing with defiance. "What do you want me to say? That I regret it? That I'm sorry? Because you know what? I don't know if I am. I don't know what I want anymore." Her admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I had braced myself for excuses, for a desperate plea to fix things, but the honesty in her words felt like a slap. "So you're saying you're okay with throwing away everything we've built?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and I could see the conflict brewing beneath the surface. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand, David. I felt so alone. It wasn't about you. It was about me trying to feel something again." "Feel something?" I echoed, incredulous. "You chose to feel something with another man instead of talking to me. Did you even think about how this would affect our family, our daughter?" Tears pooled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand. "I didn't think, I just acted. I was trying to escape a life that felt suffocating, and I thought maybe a little excitement would help. Escape? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. You thought betraying our marriage was a solution. Linda, you have to understand that this is bigger than just you feeling trapped. We have responsibilities to each other and to our kids. I know, she shouted, the frustration boiling over, but I feel like I've been screaming for years and no one was listening. I just wanted to be seen. Her words stung and I couldn't deny the truth in them. We had grown distant over the years, lost in the grind of daily life. Jobs, bills, and responsibilities had overshadowed the spark that once connected us, but that didn't justify her actions. And this is how you chose to be seen. By throwing everything away. I'm not trying to justify what I did, she cried, exasperation coloring her voice. I'm trying to explain why it happened. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I needed something, anything that made me feel alive again. Alive, so you think this is living. I couldn't hold back the hurt in my voice. This feels like a nightmare to me. I don't know how we can come back from this. Silence enveloped us again, thick and suffocating. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, staring down into an abyss that threatened to swallow us whole. Maybe we need some space, I suggested, my voice low, to really think about what we want and if there's a way to salvage this. Linda's face fell and I could see the realization dawning on her that this might truly be the end. You think that's the solution? She asked softly, her voice trembling. To just walk away from everything. It's not about walking away, it's about being honest with ourselves, I replied. I'm not saying it's easy, but I need to know if we can rebuild trust. Right now, it feels like we're just two strangers trying to make sense of a mess. For a moment, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, but it was quickly dimmed by the weight of our reality. I don't want to lose you, David. I don't want to lose this family, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then we need to figure out how to fix this, I said, hopping to find a glimmer of common ground. But it's going to take work from both of us. We can't just pretend things are okay when they're not. Linda nodded slowly, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I know it's going to take time, but I'm willing to try to fight for us if you are. Her words felt like a lifeline, but doubt still lingered in the air. We had a long road ahead, and I knew trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. I wanted to believe that we could find a way through this, but the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. As we sat in the kitchen, the silence resumed, but it felt different, less suffocating, more reflective. I knew we both needed to confront our feelings, to dig deep and understand what we truly wanted from our marriage. It wasn't going to be easy, but perhaps we could navigate the darkness together. After finishing our coffee, I suggested, maybe we should consider seeing a therapist, someone who can help us talk through this. Linda looked thoughtful for a moment. I think that's a good idea. I've never wanted to go before, but we need guidance now more than ever. The conversation marked a small step in the right direction, but I was still plagued by uncertainty. Would it be enough? Could we truly find our way back to each other? As I stepped outside for a moment of fresh air, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The sun was shining brightly, but it felt like a cruel contrast to the emotional storm swirling inside me. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I also knew it was a journey worth taking for Mia's sake and for our marriage. In that moment, I resolved to fight for the love we had once shared, even if it felt impossible. I owed it to both of us to try. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. Linda and I agreed to start therapy together, both of us recognizing that we needed help navigating the turbulent waters of our marriage. The first session was nerve-wracking. I felt exposed, raw, and vulnerable as we sat in the small, sterile office, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint smell of antiseptic. Our therapist, Dr. Shannon, was kind but firm, guiding us through the initial stages of our conversations. Let's start by acknowledging what brought you here, she said, her voice calm and soothing. David, would you like to share how you've been feeling since the wedding? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. I feel betrayed and hurt. Watching Linda flirt with another man at our daughter's wedding felt like a punch to the gut. I thought we were a team, and suddenly it felt like I was an outsider in my own marriage. Linda sat beside me, her eyes downcast. I didn't mean for it to happen, and I regret it every day. But it's not just that. I felt disconnected from David for a long time. I was searching for something, anything that made me feel alive. Dr. Shannon nodded encouragingly. It sounds like both of you have been feeling isolated in your own ways. David, how did Linda's actions affect your sense of trust? Trust has been broken, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. It's hard to look at her without feeling that betrayal creeping in. Our entire life together feels like it's shattered, and I don't know if we can put the pieces back together. Linda's eyes filled with tears at my words, and I could see the guilt reflected in her gaze. I never wanted to hurt you, David. I just felt lost and desperate for a connection. I thought flirting would remind me of that spark, but it turned into something I couldn't control. Dr. Shannon interjected. It's important to recognize that seeking connection isn't inherently wrong. However, acting on those feelings outside the marriage can lead to devastating consequences. Understanding the root of this disconnect is crucial to rebuilding your relationship. As the session continued, we delved deeper into our past, exploring the moments we had both neglected to address. We talked about the years of stress, work, and the challenges of raising children that had pulled us apart. I began to realize that the cracks in our marriage had been forming long before that night. After the first session, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. There was something therapeutic about airing our grievances in front of a neutral party, someone who could help us navigate the emotional minefield we were walking through. Yet, the journey ahead felt daunting, and I knew it wouldn't be a quick fix. Over the next few weeks, we continued to attend therapy, slowly peeling back the layers of our relationship. Linda shared her feelings of loneliness and frustration, revealing how she felt neglected as I poured myself into work. I, in turn, opened up about my feelings of betrayal, fear, and confusion about our future. The conversations were painful, raw, and often uncomfortable, but they were necessary. Each session felt like a roller coaster, filled with highs and lows, moments of clarity, and instances of deep-seated anger. But as we continued to unpack our emotions, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago, the woman who had shared my dreams and supported me through life's challenges. One day, after a particularly intense session, we decided to take a walk in a nearby park. It was a beautiful spring afternoon, the sun shining down and the flowers blooming all around us. As we strolled, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a welcome change from the turmoil that had consumed us for so long. "Do you remember our first date?" Linda asked, a small smile creeping onto her face. I chuckled, the memory flooding back. "Of course. We went to that little Italian restaurant and you spilled marinara sauce all over your dress. You were so embarrassed, but honestly I thought it was adorable." She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I remember thinking you'd never want to see me again after that, but you just smiled and helped me clean up and we ended up talking for hours." "That was the start of everything," I said, my heart swelling with nostalgia. "I loved how you made me feel at ease, how we could talk about anything and everything." "That's what I miss," she admitted, her expression turning more serious. "I miss the connection we had. I want to find that again." As we walked, I felt a shift within myself. I remembered the love that had brought us together, the laughter and the joy. It sparked a small flame of hope deep within me. Maybe we could rebuild what had been lost. Maybe it was possible to find our way back to each other. That night, as we settled down for dinner, I suggested trying a new recipe together, something we used to enjoy doing before life got in the way. Linda looked surprised but pleased. "That sounds great. I'd love to," she said, her eyes lighting up. We spent the evening cooking, chopping vegetables, and sharing stories. The kitchen was filled with laughter, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like we were a team again. I could see the spark of our connection slowly reigniting, and it filled me with a sense of gratitude. As the weeks passed, our therapy sessions continued to help us navigate our feelings, and we made a concerted effort to communicate better. We learned to listen to each other, to express our needs and desires without fear of judgment. But even as we worked to rebuild our connection, I still struggled with the memories of her betrayal. There were moments when fear crept in, and I found myself questioning if we could truly overcome the damage that had been done. One night I lay awake, consumed by thoughts of our future. Could I ever fully trust Linda again? Would the wounds from her infidelity ever heal? It was during these moments of doubt that I realized I had to confront my feelings head-on. I couldn't allow the past to dictate our future. I needed to take control of my emotions, to nurture the love that still existed beneath the hurt. It became clear to me that rebuilding our marriage would take time, patience, and effort from both of us. But I was willing to fight for it, not just for Linda, but for myself and for the family we had built together. As I closed my eyes that night, I made a silent promise to myself. I would do my best to forgive, to move forward, and to nurture the love that had once united us. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to try, and that was the first step. The months that followed were both challenging and enlightening. Linda and I continued our therapy sessions, diligently working on rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't a quick process. Some days felt like we were taking 2 steps forward only to take 1 step back. But we were committed to making it work, and that commitment was a crucial first step toward healing. One day during our session, Dr. Shannon asked us to reflect on what we had learned about ourselves through this ordeal. I paused, considering the question carefully. I've learned how easy it is to take each other for granted, I admitted. I thought everything was fine because we were just going through the motions, but I realize now how important it is to communicate openly about our feelings and needs. Linda nodded. I've learned that my actions have consequences, and I can't run away from my problems. I should have come to you with my feelings instead of seeking attention elsewhere. I was looking for something that I thought was missing, but I only ended up causing more pain. Dr. Shannon smiled, her approval evident. Recognizing these patterns is essential. It sounds like both of you are on the right track toward building a healthier relationship. After that session, I felt lighter. The act of addressing our feelings had brought us closer, and I could see the glimmer of hope in Linda's eyes as we walked out of the office together. We began to spend more quality time as a couple, going on date nights, having long conversations over dinner, and rediscovering the things we once loved about each other. One evening, we decided to take a weekend trip to the cabin we used to visit before life got complicated. As we drove through the familiar winding roads, I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. The scenery was beautiful, and I was flooded with memories of laughter and love shared in that cabin. When we arrived, the cabin looked just as I remembered it, rustic, cozy, and filled with the scent of pine. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the landscape, we settled on the porch, sipping wine and reminiscing about our favorite moments together. It feels good to be here again, Linda said, her voice soft. I've missed this place. Me too, I replied, looking out at the view. It reminds me of the simpler times when we didn't have to worry about anything except enjoying each other's company. She smiled, and in that moment, I realized how much I had missed the genuine connection we used to share. We talked late into the night, laughing and reminiscing, and I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was as if we were rekindling the spark that had been dimmed for so long. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to make breakfast. As I cooked, I felt a sense of purpose and joy for the first time in a long while. I wanted to create new memories with Linda, memories that would replace the painful ones from the past. When she joined me in the kitchen, her hair tousled and a sleepy smile on her face, I couldn't help but smile back. "Good morning, sleepyhead," I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Good morning," she replied, taking a sip and sighing contentedly. "What are we having?" "Just the classics, scrambled eggs, bacon, and pancakes," I said with a grin. As we sat down to eat, I noticed how our conversation flowed more easily. The tension that had once defined our interactions was slowly melting away, replaced with warmth and understanding. We talked about our plans for the future, our dreams, and what we wanted to achieve as a couple. "David, I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work," Linda said earnestly, her eyes meeting mine. "I know I messed up, but I'm willing to put in the effort to rebuild what we lost. I want to be the partner you deserve." "I appreciate that, Linda." I replied, my heart swelling with emotion. I want to rebuild our marriage too. I'm still learning to trust again, but I believe we can do this together. After breakfast, we decided to take a hike in the woods surrounding the cabin. As we walked, I felt a sense of renewal. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and earth, and the sounds of nature enveloped us. It reminded me of the connection we once had, the adventures we shared. Halfway up the trail, we stumbled upon a clearing with a breathtaking view of the valley below. We stood there, side by side, taking it all in. In that moment, I felt a rush of gratitude wash over me, gratitude for this second chance, for the love that was still alive beneath the scars. Together, we can face anything, I said softly, and Linda nodded, a smile lighting up her face. As we continued our hike, we talked about the importance of communication, of being open and honest with each other. We made promises to check in regularly about our feelings, to create a safe space for vulnerability. The trip was a turning point for us, a reminder of the love that had brought us together in the first place. We returned home feeling more connected than ever. Over the next few months, we continued our therapy sessions, but we also began to implement what we had learned into our daily lives. We made it a point to prioritize date nights, family outings, and even small gestures of affection. I found myself falling in love with Linda all over again, rediscovering the depths of her heart and the complexities of her soul. There were still some difficult conversations, moments of doubt and fear, but we faced them together. Each time we confronted our issues, we learned more about each other and ourselves. The process was far from easy, but it was worth every moment. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Linda came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "I'm really proud of us," she said softly. "I know we've come a long way." I turned to face her, looking into her eyes. "We have. But it's only the beginning. I'm excited about what the future holds for us." As we stood there, embracing, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. The road to healing was long and winding, but I was willing to navigate it, hand in hand with Linda. I had learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's also about weathering the storms together and emerging stronger on the other side. And while there would always be scars from the past, I knew that our love had the power to heal, to grow, and to thrive. The journey was far from over, but we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together.